Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Opinion Machine, the show where we talk about all things gaming. My name is Killjoy, and today I want to talk a bit about being colorblind in games, or I'm sorry, having colorblindness and also playing games. So this is something that cropped up from a game that I've been playing recently. If you've ever played the Trine series, there's also a spin-off game they did called Nine Parchments, which is a magic-based game that has you learning different spells and working with allies, or fighting your allies to deal with enemies. And this game gets very chaotic on screen, and this is what kind of led me to do this, have this little discussion, is that in that game you have different colours of magic. So if you have a red enemy, essentially you use fire against them, they're immune to it. So you have to kind of switch between your spells to do that. All while there's different coloured enemies on the screen, all while there's you and your allies firing off different effects, trying not to blow each other up, essentially, all that sort of stuff. Now, I quite like the game. I think it's a lot of fun, but the issue that arose for me was that I was really struggling, and while playing it, still am really struggling to figure out what I need to use against what enemies, and also what my allies are throwing. For example, like, you can chuck a big health spell onto the ground, and I would constantly confuse it for the fireball spell, or the enemies that I'm like shooting with the ice beam are resistant to ice, and then you get ones that come out that are similar to colour to me, which are the ones that have like the death beam, and I'm like, well, I don't know what I can use on these guys. And it kind of got me thinking about like how games can kind of negate this for people that are, that have colour deficiency, that are colourblind, things like that. Now, I struggle with mainly red-green and some blue-purple, but obviously I still have issues with some shades and things like that. But in a game like Nine Parchments that relies on you to switch between spells that are effective against different enemies, I think a really easy solution for a game like this is to just, above the enemy's head, just put in writing, like very clear writing, fire, ice, like death magic, like the type of magic that they are. Because then I know, oh, if I use ice on ice, that's not going to work. If I use like death magic on, or poison magic essentially, on a poison enemy, that's not going to work. And I think it's something that you should be, which would completely fix any issue I have. The other thing is, you can also, a game like this, you could also just put the colour above the enemy's head. So you put red above them, or blue, or whatever colour it is for each enemy above the head. So it's like, oh, this is yellow, this is lightning, don't want to use that kind of stuff, but actually have it written out so that it's visible for the player to see. Now, obviously, this doesn't affect every single game, because not every single game has a reliance on colour. I see this a lot with, obviously, puzzle games. Puzzle games do this a lot. They tend to go for, nowadays, different shapes as well as colours. There's a really fun Worms game called Worms Blast, which is basically kind of like your Buster Move style game. You use your bazooka, you fire up at the different colours, and that's great. The problem is not so much the fact that each item in that game is a different colour as well as a different shape. It's the cursor that you have, the crosshair. Sometimes it's hard to match it with some of the colours on screen. Now, sometimes I'd get lucky and it wouldn't be a problem, because it'd be like, oh, these colours are all very different, I can tell the difference. But sometimes yellows and greens, sometimes blue and purples, and it's like, it's sometimes just a 50-50 as to whether it's going to actually work, or, win or lose me the match, essentially. And I've seen this with more and more games where, like, like Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal have awesome colorblind modes. You can change, like, the HUD. You make the HUD really, like, bright orange if you want. That makes it easier. You can change it. It will change certain shades to make it easy to see, like, visibly what, for the player and whatnot. And that's great. But when you do get, like, a lot of RPGs that have a reliance on, like, color, or a lot of games that have a reliance on different elements and things like that, I do wish more games would have a better solution. Something else that I sometimes struggle with is that when games have a loot system, it goes white to orange, all that sort of stuff, and you have your blues and your yellows and your purples in there somewhere. I don't know, like, I meant to memorize the order in which they go in to have some idea. Now, I think Borderlands 2 or Borderlands 3 did add in the fact they would actively say, like, orange, purple, things like that on it, so you could tell the rarity that way, which is great, and, like, that's really helpful. But I do kind of wish there was a lot less reliance on colour for many games. It's not that it can't be done, it's just, I think games just solely relying on color makes it harder for people like myself. You know, some people only see in grayscale, which must make things even more difficult. But yeah, just straight up, just like not having these alternate methods to relay that information on screen to somebody playing it. I would like to see more games do it. Now, I'm always appreciative when a game has a colorblind mode. The most basic thing is that they'll have the 3 different main colorblindness, and you can switch between them, and it will change colors and things like that on the fly. But sometimes it comes down to a lot of like visual indicators, and I think that's the thing that can be frustrating with certain games. Like, oh, just give me a visual indicator. It can be symbols. Like in 9 Parchments, for example, it could be a different symbol. It could be like a firebolt above a head, a lightning bolt versus a yellow one. You know, it's just to symbolize that's the element that each creature has, rather than the reliance on, hey, you need to use these spells, they're immune to these particular spells of the same color or the same element. Just find a way to incorporate that in a way that does at least allow even people that are not colorblind and potentially an easier way to be like, oh, I need to use a different spell. If I'm using fire, I don't want to use it against the fire enemy. Things like that. That's kind of like my biggest issue, and I see this with various games. I like it when you have like highlighting options, when it like makes like items and stuff in the world like super highlighted. Perfect example of that, I played Shadow Gambit Cursed Crew. You've got a button to highlight stuff, everything that you need to know, and it makes for a visual effect for me. It's like that game doesn't really rely on color, but now I can easily see things. It pops things that I need to know. It gives me that visual information and feedback very, very easily. And I wish more games just had options. Like, I fully understand that for an average player who doesn't have a color deficiency, you probably don't want all these extra bells and whistles. Some people might. They might go, oh, actually, that's really useful. That's going to help me play this game. I can see things clearer. And I think those are good to have as well. But for me personally, like, whenever I'm playing multiplayer games, I need to be able to see what I'm doing clearly, and it can really take away that enjoyment. Something as simple as like even playing like Civilization, and it doesn't matter too much, but the colors that you can have for the different civilizations with the different border colors. Sometimes some people are like, oh, it's so and so, is this going to be these because it's these colors. I'm like, I have no idea until I find that person, and that's just a very minor thing. That's not that important. That game doesn't really rely on color, and it gives you a lot of information in other ways. But yeah, it's just something that's kind of really popped up, and I think games, I appreciate that smaller games might not have the budget to do more with it, but I really hope there's less reliance on color going forward, or at least alternate ways to do it, because it really does frustrate my enjoyment. Like even something as simple as Rocket League. Rocket League is set to orange and blue. I've got colorblind mode on, so the name tags are always orange and blue for me. There's no difference. I always know I'm on the orange team or the blue team. If I turn that off, some of the colors that people pick for their own personal things are so similar to one another that I genuinely like just get confused, because I'm like, oh, it's blue, and it's like, oh wait, no, it's purple. That's one of the biggest offenders for me personally. So I'm always appreciative when a game does at least try to help me as somebody with that kind of condition to make that easier for me to understand, be able to process that information. But it's, you know, I still think especially AAA games could do a better job of it. I think recently we've seen with Prince of Persia, I haven't played it, but it has this like high contrast mode, I think it's called, where like the things that are interactable on the screen versus the backgrounds are like super bright colored. Everything else is like grayed out, so you're like a bright orange color, all the enemies are bright red, so it makes it really easy to like visually see what I'm dealing with and all that sort of stuff. So that's a game I want to look at deeply into its accessibility, because I think they obviously did a really good job with that. But this is just sort of more of a little bit of a quick rant and more of a discussion on, hey, like, you know, as a colorblind gamer, playing things like Portal and other games like that kind of have a reliance on it. It's like, please add in visual text or visual symbols to help differentiate certain objects in a game. And again, this doesn't apply to every game, but any game that is using elements or any game that is using sort of like color basics and things like that, it's like, please let me customize things. It just makes it a lot easier. Even something as simple as playing Carcassonne, the digital version of Carcassonne, there's a couple of the meeple colors in that are very, very similar to one another. and that can really throw me off when I'm playing and I'm trying to put down pieces, and then I end up giving points to somebody else. So that's always fun. But yeah, it's only a quick video today. I just wanted to kind of get this off my chest because it's something I've been noticed recently from playing 9 Parchments, and just think it's really important for people that have colorblind moments to have a different and an easier way to quickly identify what they need to do on screen rather than guessing and going for a 50-50 essentially. So thank you very much for watching the video as always. If you like the video, hit like. If you want to see more content, then hit subscribe. Links for Facebook and Twitter will be down below in the description as always, and until next video, I will see you then.